14 books, that is the amount of books I read since I did my last wrap up 2 months ago. And just as last time, we're gonna rank these, but this time I'm gonna start with the worst books I read out of these 14, and then slowly we're gonna make our way to the best book. So this might be a bit of a longer video, so make sure to make yourself a cup of tea, and let's start talking about the books I read recently. And we're going to start with my least favorite out of all of these 14 books, and I think this might be a big surprise for some of you, but that is the book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. So this is an art copy, so you can see the title here, and man, this book has received so many raving reviews, and I understand that this is not a badly written book, it is just simply not a book that worked for me. I have now officially read the first book in 3 different series by Mark Lawrence, and I haven't rated any of them really. I've given all of them 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about Mark Lawrence's writing that just doesn't work with me. And I know that he is massively popular and his prose is great, but I don't know what it is. I just can't get into it. I just find myself bored, and with this one, I just felt this one was very slow paced. I mean, the concept is great, but also I don't really care for the characters. And the fact that parallel universes and stuff like that play a major role in this novel is not necessarily a bad thing, because I don't think that that is inherently a bad trope, but I think you need to be very good to pull that off. And for me, I don't know, it just didn't work, but most people seem to love this book. So yeah, if you love Mark Lawrence, then definitely check out this book, but unfortunately, I just think that Mark Lawrence is probably not an author for me. Now on the 14th spot is also a bit surprised, because I know so many of you love this novella, but that is not Arcanum Unbounded, but it is The Secret History, which is book 3.5 in the Mistborn universe, if that makes any sense. So basically it's recommended to have read at least the Mistborn trilogy and the first 2 books in Era 2 before you read it. Now I think the reason why I didn't enjoy this one is because I made the stupid mistake of waiting like 3 years between reading the Mistborn trilogy and then picking up this novella, which is a rookie mistake, and I think that if I had read it instantly afterwards, then I would probably enjoy it way more. Now I won't say any spoilers, because as I said, you have to read a lot of books to even understand this novella. Basically, my biggest issue here is that I didn't find the novella that entertaining, and then secondly, this book utilizes the resurrection trope, which is an incredibly dangerous trope to utilize, and Sanderson in the postscript of this novella, he even acknowledges that this is a very dangerous trope to use and so on. But my issue here is that I didn't really find any massive justification for bringing this character back that I'm thinking about here, except that he is a fan favorite, and actually the events in Mistborn Era 1 are less epic, if that makes any sense, or compelling. I think the Mistborn trilogy stood absolutely perfectly on its own, and now that I know what was happening in the background, it kinda diminishes the efforts of my favorite characters, if that makes any sense. Now I don't hate this novella, but if you look on Goodreads, most people have given this novella like 4.5 or 5 out of 5 stars, well I'll probably give it 3 out of 5 stars. On the 12th spot we have Isla's Reach. I mean, firstly, just look at that cover. That cover is so ridiculously beautiful, and this is a self-published book, actually by one of my former contributors to my blog when my blog still existed, which it doesn't exist anymore. Firstly, I must say that this is a very solid debut, and I enjoyed a lot of aspects of this book, and after having read the first book, I can see so much potential in this world. Francesca has really crafted something that has amazing potential, and I'm really impressed by her ability to write such a compelling story, considering that this is a debut novel, so well done. Now I think my primary issue here was that I felt that the pacing was a bit inconsistent, and also that maybe this book was just a bit over ambitious. I mean, the scope, the magic system, everything here is quite epic in scale, and it's ambitious, and I just had the feeling that maybe if the scale and everything was just turned down a bit, then maybe this novel would have been even better. But nonetheless, this was a very solid book, and I would definitely recommend giving it a try. And also, again, this cover is so beautiful. Now on the 11th spot, we have the 3rd book in a series that I've been reading this year, which is The Hod King, which is book 3 in the Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. Now this series, I mean, it is hurting my brain because there is so much potential. Whenever I read a book in the series, I've had a feeling about, oh my gosh, this could have been a 5 out of 5 star read for sure. But for some reason, Bancroft, he just loves taking risks, and usually I have huge respect for authors when they just don't follow a formula and so on. But a lot of these risks or big changes or decisions he makes to the plot, they just don't really fall that well with me. I've just had the feeling with every single book that that this could have been so ridiculously amazing because the prose is so good, and the concept of this whole series is some of the most refreshing and unique I've come across in a very long time, which makes it even more frustrating that Bancroft, he continuously makes decisions that just baffle me. Now, what I found so weird with the Hot King is that he decided to split up the plot into 3 individual parts, and basically Senlen, who is the protagonist of this whole series, suddenly almost becomes a side character in his own novel, which I just don't really understand why he decided to go without choice. And also now this massive tower we've been in just feels smaller for some reason. I don't know if Bancroft changed his mind about this scale of this tower or something. I don't know. I made a full discussion on Grace's channel if you want to check it out, so let's just move on. On the 10th spot, we have also a massive popular book, and a book I've also made a full dedicated spoiler-free review for, but that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, I expected going into this book that I would give it 3.5 stars, and after having read this book, I will probably also give it that exact rating, 3.5 stars. But I just think my main issue here is that this novel promises so much. You go into this massive futuristic world and you see there's so much potential and you become really excited. Now, instead of delivering on a beautiful and epic political sci-fi opera, we are basically giving a Hunger Games novel, and I'm not saying that that is necessarily a bad thing. I just think that there was a mismatch between what we were promised as a reader and what we were giving. Now, the good thing is that almost everyone says that book 2 and 3, they deliver on all my expectations or everything that I hope is going to happen. And after having come to the end of this novel, I am so excited to continue the series. So yeah, I expected this one not to be a favorite of mine, but hopefully book 2 and 3 will become new favorites of mine. So yeah, on the 9th spot, we have A Sorrow Named Joy by Sarah Chorn. Now, Sarah Chorn is one of the most popular editors actually in the self-published community, and she has published several books. Now, this is just a novella, and I really enjoyed this novella. Sarah Chorn has beautiful writing, and I thought the concept was absolutely brilliant. I read this in one sitting, and I don't even want to spoil it, but I had a great time. You can read this in around like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how fast you read, and it is just beautiful, it is interesting, and it tells you a lot about humanity and our potential future with robots and AIs and so on. Alright, let's move on to the next one. On the 8th spot, we have We Ride the Storm by Devin Madsen. Now, I actually won this copy from the Broken Binding literally right when it opened, so it does have an art card in there, and it does also have a signed book plate. And I haven't heard many people talk about this book, but I've been wanting to read this for so long simply because it seems to be underrated and the cover is so beautiful. And the good news is that this was a really great book. Now, it's not the best book I read this year, but there's just something overly addictive with this novel. The pacing is ruthless and there's so many satisfying plot twists. It is absolutely brutal and grim, and the setting feels so different and refreshing. So this is a quartet, this is the first book, and I'm definitely planning on continuing the series. So really, if you're looking for a hidden grimdark gem that has a beautiful cover, then I really can't recommend this enough. I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I had a really great time with it, and yeah, as I said, I would definitely recommend it. Now, on 7th spot, we have Seeds of War by Joe Silva. Sorry, I'm always pushing this first name. Firstly, just look how beautiful this cover is. Now, this is a self-published book, and this is also a grimdark novel, and I had a wonderful time with this book. Firstly, the magic system is absolutely fascinating. It basically focuses on smoke, which is so interesting, which is also the reason why this is called The Smoke Smith. That's the name of the series. And I know this is a very minor thing, but if you buy a physical copy, there isn't that much text on each page. So literally when you read it, you feel like you're gonna flip the pages like almost every 30 seconds or so, which I know is a minor thing, but it just makes the whole experience so satisfying. It just makes you feel like you can read so much of this book in like an hour or so. But I must say that this is an incredibly solid and strong debut. Firstly, the world building is so good. But what I think is the best thing here is that the characters are great, and Silva has a wonderful ability to craft a compelling and complex plot. There were some decisions he made in this novel where I was just like, wow, that is pretty crazy as a debut author that you're willing to make those decisions, but it just works and he pulls it off. And as a reader, you will feel like you're constantly being rewarded as you read this novel. I just thought that this was so brilliant, and I absolutely can't wait to read book 2. Sorry, I'm going quite quickly through all of these, but there's just so many books. Alright, on 6th spot, we have The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. Actually, I gave this 4.5 stars out of 5, which probably should make this go on the 2nd spot of all the books I read recently, but really, the reason reason I think I love this book so much is literally because I think this was a book I picked up at the exact right timing. Now, I've been close to going into a reading slump for a while because I've been quite stressed, and a lot of the books I read haven't been that compelling to me, but this was just so entertaining. It was so unique. It's basically set in a futuristic world where instead of having these massive wars, all these major conflicts are being resolved in duels. So these two big nations that we're focusing on, they basically train warriors off from a young age to become these incredible fighters, and then they fight in duels, and whoever wins actually just wins that conflict. Or maybe if there's like a dispute about an area of land, instead of like sending armies into a big war, they will choose a fighter from each nation, and whoever wins actually wins that piece of land, and so on. So I love that concept, but also this book utilizes some of my favorite tropes. We have a really good underdog. We also have the mentor trope, and I just thought that the pacing was so good. The writing style is accessible, and again, it has that addictive writing style to it. So really, if people are gonna ask me in the future, I'm in a reading slump, which book should I read? I would always recommend pick up an old favorite, or from now on, I would probably recommend picking up the Combat Codes. It has great pacing, accessible writing styles, and as I said, it just feels so refreshing. I absolutely consumed this book, and I need book 2 right now. But before we move on, I have to mention again, this isn't like a literary masterpiece. This isn't Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, but it is just a very good time. Alright, on 5th spot, we have, again, another short story from Arcane Unbounded, but this time it is The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson, which is without a doubt Sanderson's most popular novella. I mean, a lot of people even say that The Emperor's Soul is Sanderson's best writing ever, and I felt like I missed out that I haven't picked up this novella, and I finally read it, and I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it didn't reach those heights that I was hoping for. Really, the reason why I think this novella is so much loved is because the very final pages of this novella are, they're so beautiful. And Sanderson, he just is able to wrap up this novella absolutely masterfully. Now, this is only around 110 pages, and throughout the plot, I mean, it is enjoyable. I enjoyed the whole story following this character called Shy, as she's based on this mission to construct the Emperor's Soul, so I won't say more than that. And I found that plot to be fascinating, but really just the last act, and especially the last 2 pages, it really makes you think deeply about life, about art, and about beauty. And I really think that that's why people love it so much, because yeah, as I said, it has some of the most beautiful writing Sanderson has ever written, probably. So if you didn't have those 2 last pages of this novella, I think a lot of people would probably give it 3.5 or 4 stars. But since those 2 last pages are just so beautiful written, it just really makes you think deeply about all of these things I just mentioned. So I totally get why people love this novella, and I also loved it. But since I found most of this novella to be around a 4-star read, while the last 2 pages are brilliant, it's probably gonna have to be a 4-star read, but definitely would recommend. Now on the 4th spot, we have The Bone Shifts by RJ Barker. Now, I also made a full spoiler-free dedicated review for this one, and if you don't know, then I'm currently hosting a read-along for this one, and in July we have started book 2. So this was the book we read in June, and I had a really great time with this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is one of the most unique and refreshing settings I've ever come across, and Barker's prose is wonderful, but it is quite challenging to get into because the amount of new terminology he uses and throws at you is quite intense, especially the first 50 or 100 pages can be quite rough. But I think that if you're willing to invest your time into this novel, because there's quite a steep learning curve, then I think that you'll find some massive reward with this book. It has great characters, beautiful world building, and beautiful prose, and it has massive sea dragons, which I'm not sure if I've ever come across ever in fantasy before. So yeah, everything about this is unique and it's beautiful, and I absolutely can't wait to read book 2. Alright, moving on to my 3rd favorite book out of the 14 books I read recently is The Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. Now, this book was so ridiculously depressing. Now, I know Robin Hobb, she loves to torture fists, she loves to write sad books, but at times this almost became a bit too much. Now, I think that this is a beautiful conclusion, and I really enjoyed the story. Again, it's slow paced, but I found it to be very compelling, but I'm not going to give this 5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a good conclusion to the Tournament trilogy, but I've always come to a point with Robin Hobb where I'm almost like, okay, you could make this choice in your writing and make it sad, but why do you have to make it so ridiculously sad all the time? Like, I don't understand how Fist is still alive at this point. Like, the amount of times he's gonna get his heart broken is so insane. But I felt that this was a very suitable conclusion to this trilogy. It definitely expands the world, it expands also on the characters, and we have some beautiful character arcs, and we also see some characters that were scattered from each other in the Farsa trilogy. They actually come together here after so many years. Like, this book and also the series as a whole has so many unique character moments. So I just love Robin Hobb, I love everything she writes, and this book had to be high on my ranking. Alright, let's move on to my second favorite book out of the 14 books I read in the past 2 months, and that is The Martian by Andy Weir. I know, how come I haven't read this book, especially since I love Project Hail Mary so much. So I finally read The Martian, and firstly, I still think the Project Hail Mary is better, but I just loved The Martian. I just had a wonderful time with it, and the thing that I find the most incredible and compelling with The Martian is the fact that most of this book is told through log entries. So we basically have this diary of this astronaut that is stuck on Mars, and he writes his experience being totally alone on Mars. And it is incredible that Andy Weir is able to make a story like that so compelling. Now imagine if someone gave you the challenge of writing a story about a man that was all alone on a planet where nothing grows and make it interesting and compelling. Would you be able to do it? I think most, even like talented authors, would really struggle with that. But the very fact that Andy Weir is able to write such a great story about a man that is alone on Mars is just baffling. So this book deserves all the praise, and Andy Weir is just such a talented author, and I really need to read Artemis, which is the only book I haven't read by him, which I know a lot of people say isn't as good. But yeah, Andy Weir, definitely one of my favorite authors of all time at this point. But my favorite book out of the 14 I read recently and at the moment is my favorite book of the year, and I've made a full dedicated spoiler-free review for it, but that must be The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. I mean, I'm currently reading The Wheel Throne, which is book 3 in this novel, and I'm pretty sure that this will break into my top 10 favorite series of all time. This book takes The Grace of Kings, which is the first book in the series, and improves on everything. There are more compelling character moments. The scale is just taken to a whole new level, and the very fact that this is a intergenerational story that literally spans over so many years and even continents at this point is, I mean, the ambition is this high, and Ken Liu, he just matches those expectations perfectly. Now this is quite a dense book. There's a lot of information, there are a lot of characters, but I just found this book to be so ridiculously rewarding to read through, and the ambition to write a book like this is just absolutely baffling. And also love the themes of power and how do you build up an empire and corruption and human nature. It is just, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so heartbreaking, it's so action-packed, and really it is just so compelling. So I would actually be quite surprised if I read a better book than this one this year. Hopefully I do, but for now, this is the best book I've not only read in the past 2 months, but really this year. So those are the 14 books I read in the past 2 months. What did you think about my rating? Do you agree with my rating or not? Definitely let me know, and thank you so much for watching. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some inspiration to read more books. Now, if you want to support me in any way, then you can check out my Patreon. I have different tiers, and you will get different benefits depending on what tier you support. Some of the benefits include getting your name in my videos, voting rights on my next feed, getting a special role on my Discord server, getting access to one Patreon exclusive video a month, or even art cards and bookmarks signed by my wife and me. Most of the money goes to hiring an editor to do a couple of videos for me a month, which basically allows me to post high quality content more frequently. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and God bless.